work.
Well, the government has promised what it's called catch-up funding to help pupils and students who've been set back over the last year. £1.4 billion was promised last week, but the man in charge of the government's catch-up plan has quit. Sir Kevin Collins said that money was nowhere near enough, although Boris Johnson has said there will be more funding to come. So how are Norfolk's educators feeling about all of this? Let's talk to Dr Catherine Richards, who's the principal of East Norfolk Sixth Form College in Galston. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Chris. No, it's an interesting day. First day back, lots to be doing, and certainly it's been interesting to hear of the earlier debates about how young people feel. I know for our students here it has been a challenging year, but as you've heard before, teachers and other staff, we're all trying to get together and really make sure that our students aren't disadvantaged in any way.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a good starting point, isn't it? You've had the people that you teach back for quite a while now, and I suppose you're probably well placed to answer how necessary any sort of catch-up plan actually is. What are we trying to catch up with?
Well, I think that is a really interesting question because all pupils, all students, they've all had the same experience. And I think what's really clear is that young people deserve to have the very best education and deserve the very best facilities and opportunities. And I like to think of the catch-up in terms of giving them experiences that they should be having. And it's kind of an extra, really, an enhancement to their education rather than seeing it as a negative.
Yeah, £1.4 billion. Apparently, we're told that works out at £50 per student per year. So what is the reality of that? How far would you actually be able to make that stretch?
Well, we've become incredibly good in education at using every single last penny. So we will be investing ours into getting extra support in the classroom for students who may be struggling, particularly around the areas of maths and science. But I think, and I know it was raised earlier, the most important thing is for each individual institution to pick how it thinks it should be best spent. And I think it's up to head teachers who are very skilled in working in this area to actually pick what's best for their students.
So your concern, reading between the lines of what you've said, your concern would be that any money you're given might come with a few caveats of you can spend it on that but not that.
Usually there are various arrangements or there are things that we need to do with the money. What I would like to see is a genuine discussion about giving educators, giving head teachers some additional funding that they can use in the classrooms, that they can use to provide activities. I know earlier there was discussion about things like music, art. That's the area that I think will help our young people to develop most, to become most creative. And I would really like to see that. I know in the autumn we have the spending review, and I know government are going to be looking at what the funding rate will be in the future. And I would also like to see a debate starting to happen about that, because a small increase in the rate per student would make such a difference to us here at East Norfolk. And I know there's a massive amount of good that we'll be able to do for that money. I mean, absolute value for money. I mean, education is the key to loads of other outcomes, whether that's health, whether that's employment, whether that's resilience. So I think the investment would be well worth it.
Yeah, but it's not so much about the amount of money that you're getting, it's what you're allowed to do with it that you're most concerned about.
Yeah, I think that's key. I think if we are given pots of funding, I think giving us the flexibility to be able to use that. Now, you've mentioned earlier about the extended day. I think extending the day, is a challenge because there are many terms and conditions that teachers work to. You have issues around the facilities, whether or not the right pupils would want to stay on, and certainly students at East Norfolk, lots of them have got part-time jobs, they work weekends, so having a longer college day for them actually may not be accessible. They've also got sometimes caring responsibilities at home, which is why I think giving grants or additional funding in a way that is best able to be used for that institution is really important.
Yeah, but if we're talking about maybe pupils and students and children haven't been in the classroom enough over the last year, the most simple way of putting that right would surely be to say, right, half an hour extra on each day. It doesn't sound like a lot on a daily basis, but suddenly that's 2.5 hours a week. It's almost half an extra day's school a week. It's the neatest and the simplest way of doing things, isn't it?
I I think it is one idea. What I would say to you is most schools and certainly colleges, we don't have a set time when the college opens where we allow pupils. They don't all rush in at 9 o'clock. Actually, our facilities are open before 9 o'clock, so they can come in, they can study, they can have their breakfast, and also they don't immediately shut in the afternoon. So again, we have sports here, we have other activities. So I would say that extended day in terms of socialisation is already there. If students want to study, what we need is the ability to perhaps put on more clubs or more sports or have extra support in the classroom. There's been a lot of debate in Norfolk, I know, about whether learning support assistants are affordable in classrooms. Well, I'm sure colleagues in schools would like to be able to have more to help at the time with the learning in the classroom.
And what about our previous guest, Amy, who's just come through her first year of sixth form? Her big concern is how out of practice she and her fellow students are when it comes to exams, because there weren't any last year, there aren't any formal exams this year. By the time she's sitting her A-level, she's worried that actually exam technique will have completely gone. Is that a concern that's being shared?
Absolutely. We're already looking at how we're going to make sure that our students sit enough assessments. And you're right, going into the big halls, they might be sat in there with a high number of other young people sitting an exam on a specific day. So we're already looking at, for the autumn term, making sure that we have enough assessments which replicate the A-level exams next year. And of course, those students that are leaving us this year anyway that didn't sit A-level exams, they're going to go off to university. And in their first year, they will be sitting exams, the same as we'll be doing the A-levels next year. So I think it's all students will be thinking about assessment and how they develop those memory techniques to make sure that they do their very best in the exams.
And stories like this are always fascinating whenever we talk about things like this, because you come on the air thinking, well, you know what the area of issues are, and then you speak to people who are actually doing it, and they come up with completely different ideas. And Amy was saying that one of the problems is that her teachers are concerned about students' hand strength, because they've not been used to sitting and handwriting for an hour and a half in exams. Is that something you're working on over there at East Norfolk?
Certainly that is something we look at. I know I was during lockdown, because as a head teacher I always loved doing extra exams, I'm sure you would think. So I actually sat an exam for CIPD, which is an HR examination, and I did it myself, and that was last year. And I have to say that was 3.5 hours of writing, and by the end of it I could barely write. So I absolutely understand what that's like. And I also, because of that, I'm very mindful of this. I had to go to London to sit my exam, but I'm very mindful of how a young person feels going into an environment, how an exam feels, what it looks like, the noise, the clock, all of that type of activity that's going on around them. We need to teach them what that feels like. And Amy is right, they haven't been through that.
Is it really the best way of deciding whether how to judge people's? But that's a debate for another day. Exams.
I will be on that one. I'm very happy to debate that another day with you. Yeah, yes. Definitely get me back for that. That would be great.
We've all been there, haven't we? Just those sports halls and the racket, the amazing racket that a dropped pencil will make on the floor of a sports hall. Dr. Catherine Richards, thanks for joining us, Principal of East Norfolk Sixth Form College in Galston. That's one thing I've learnt from this today: the idea that it is hand strength and exam technique that really has suffered in schools over the last year.